The world's population reached a new record, 7 billion. And we think that everyone is online. But roughly 1 billion have smartphones, and only 2 have access to the web today. I would say that the World Wide Web has yet to live up to its name, that the web is still a scarce resource. In communities all over the world, there are only pockets of connectivity, digital oases in online deserts, if you will. And for people in the most remote regions of the world, the internet has yet to arrive. So when we talk about the power of technology, we need to be realistic. There'll always be some sort of a digital divide. So the first future, and I want to talk about 3, belongs to a privileged few, the ultra-connected early adopters. They tend to be a lucky few, an unrepresentative minority, who mostly start with huge advantages in life: a good economic education, economic prosperity, democratic government, a lucky birth, if you will. Many people in this room, by the way. And for this group, the future offers only what the limits of science can offer and society deems ethical. And we know that Moore's law, which says that computing power doubles every 2 years, still holds true. We know that the cost of computer storage is halving every 14 months. And we know that by 2020, fiber networks will be deployed in almost every city. Look, go to Korea or Japan, where those networks have already been built. It's life-changing. So for those privileged few, the sky really is the limit. They, we, in many cases, can look forward to a world of unlimited speed and processing power, a world in which tiny, powerful sensors can be embedded in everything, from clothes to furniture, to form a new intelligent infrastructure. For this group, intelligent robots, virtual reality, self-driving cars will soon be commonplace. Take driverless cars, right? They're a lot closer than you think. Google's driverless cars have already driven more than 200,000 miles, and other companies and research institutions are also doing groundbreaking work in this field. So for this privileged few, science fiction will become reality and redefine the way that we live and interact, obviously. Now, alongside this group is a second and much larger technologically advanced community. I'm going to call them the connected contributors. This is a generation that grew up with increasingly sophisticated technology as part of their daily lives. A generation born into households connected to broadband with multiple computers and equipped with the skills and digital literacy to use them. But they're also the middle class, which means they can't afford everything. They can't afford the same level of technology as this privileged few, if you will. So even so, technology will open new worlds for these connected contributors. I'll give you an example, holopresence technology, which allows you to experience events in remote places, even if you were there. You'll be able to see and hear, experience the sensation of touch with something called haptic technology, and perhaps even smell with something called synthetic scent. With language translation built in, you won't even need to speak the same language. So imagine being able to stand among the street performers in the Grand Market of Marrakesh, or North Korea when, as we hope, the regime will have its first real election. Or for people who are unable to visit this amazing city, being able to touch its ancient stone walls and visit the Western Wall, see the Dome of the Rock, and walk along the Via Dolorosa. But although this group, this connected contributors, are a rapidly growing community, they're still a minority of the whole. There's another future that awaits this next 5 billion. I'm going to call them the aspiring majority. In the next decade, there'll be big improvements in the digital infrastructure of the developing world. Wired networks will get faster and go further, obviously. In the coming years, the number of new data centers will boom, mostly in markets like Southeast Asia, Turkey, and China. But we should not and cannot imagine the future simply by extrapolating our past. For this aspiring majority, it's not going to be about dial-up modems and DSL and broadband. It's going to be about the smartphone. This is my Android phone, by the way, Dr. Ruth. That little computer that's in their pockets that changes their lives. And an iPhone is okay, too. The smartphone revolution will be universal. A mobile experience of at least the level of today will be available to almost anyone at a fraction of the price. Do the math with me. In 12 years, handsets are going to be roughly 20 times faster, and phones that cost, say, $400, similar to this one, will be available for 20. Imagine what this means for the world's poor. They'll literally have a supercomputer and a really smart sidekick all rolled into one. These phones will have powerful sensors, voice-activated input, real-time analysis to diagnose medical conditions, detect air pollution, detect environmental hazards, all the things that we worry about. Now, of course, having a smartphone is not enough to get you online. You're still going to need a data connection. But smartphones don't have to talk to a central hub. They can just talk to each other, sharing data in what are called peer-to-peer relationships without intermediaries. The network that I'm talking about will become a digital watering hole where people meet and hang out. And we talked about that a little bit. Communities will be drawn closer together. People who access the network can engage in shared experiences regardless of all the physical barriers between us. No one is suggesting that technology will suddenly transform the social, political, and economic conditions of communities. But technology does not produce miracles. But connectivity, even in modest amounts, changes lives. There then is, I think, the ultimate finding of this future. There will still be elites, absolutely, but they will not have a monopoly on progress and opportunity. All of us, everyone here, regardless of where we came from, are blessed with the creativity, imagination, and a capacity for innovation. This is what Israel stands for, as far as I can tell. Connectivity will help unlock that potential. The weak will be made strong, and those with nothing will have something. Now, this future does not arrive on its own. It's important. Society must create the right conditions for citizens to take advantage of it and prosper. Let me give you an example. Let's pay attention first to how we're educating our children. Today's generation of students is the first fully connected generation the world has ever known. If they're awake, they're online. Check, talk to your kids. There's a joke that I heard about a college kid who's getting mugged, and he says, hold on, I have to update my status and say I'm being mugged, and then you can have my phone. To say that the world has been transformed by computing is an understatement. Yet oddly, this doesn't seem to apply to education, at least not very often. From what I can tell, at least in the US, the approach to classroom teaching seems to have changed little in the past decades, and maybe this is true here as well, especially for older school pupils in college. Much of the time, someone is standing in front of the class, lecturing and answering questions, while the students make notes, same as when I was a youngster in school. But as an outside observer, I find it extraordinary that the way we teach kids seems so little changed by advances in computing. Now, I'm generalizing, and there's some wonderful things happening on the margins. A great example is something called the Khan Academy, which offers about 3,000 video lessons on YouTube, always like YouTube, addressing topics from algebra to art history. In 2010, Google donated $2 million to help them create more courses, but more importantly, to translate their core material into as many languages as they could. Last year, it was used by 4.7 million people worldwide. Pretty good. Governments are also looking at ways to revolutionize the education system and bring it into the 21st century. Yesterday, we hosted your Minister of Education, Gideon Sahar, I think, at our Big Ten event, and we heard from him about initiatives already underway to invest in digitizing Israel's education system. And last week, in cooperation with this ministry, the Google folks delivered online lessons about web safety to 10,000 students around Israel in the 5th and 6th grades. So once more people get online, principles and ideas can scale, they can become globalized. And online access breeds transparency, which minimizes corruption. Online access gives people a limitless flow of knowledge. It makes clear the power of freedom of speech. It promotes the rule of law. And it encourages the people to take risks they wouldn't otherwise. Now, we've seen this in Egypt, we've seen it in Tunisia, and we've also seen it here in Israel during last summer's social protests when the internet enabled citizens to exchange ideas and voice their concerns. So all in all, the sum of this creates a much more vibrant civil society. And here, in the land of entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship expands in many, many ways. Entrepreneurship is the engine of an economy, and the web has proven a potent fuel, if you will. McKinsey estimates that 143,000 internet businesses are started every year across developing countries in the developing world alone. Here in Israel, I know the internet economy is thriving. It makes up 6.4% of the Israeli GDP. It's, I think, the highest, if not one of the highest. And growing well makes Israel a sort of world leader in relative size of its internet economy. Now, we're only at the beginning of what's possible using the web for business. So here in Startup Nation, you have a good idea for a clothing line. In the near future, you'll be able to use cloud applications to design outfits, contract with factories, establish an online store, lease a physical space, take delivery of your goods, and open for business, all in 48 hours. That's the web. That's the connected brain that Yuri talked about. And you'll be able to do it from anywhere, at any time, from your home, from your pocket. Just imagine how much better the web will get with these additional 5 billion people show up. More innovation, more creativity. If you connect people with information, they will change the world. Now, of course, this growth is not an unalloyed good. There's obviously some downsides, some obstacles, and I want to talk about 3 of them. First, we built the internet without criminals in mind. It didn't occur to us that criminals would be on it. It was a mistake. While it's getting more and more secure, the inherent vulnerabilities that in its design will exist for at least another decade. Fixing this problem is a huge task, and except for the military networks, every single node of the web that's connected and will have to be upgraded through a pretty painful process. And while threats come from individuals and even groups of people, the biggest problem will be activities stemming from nations that are trying to do harm. It's very, very, very difficult to identify the source of cybercriminality and stop it. On the internet, people and corporations may be paying to deceive or even hurt you. Second, the fact that there is no delete button on the internet forces public policy choices that we'd never imagined. Much of the existing privacy debate centers on this sort of tension between the public's right to know and the important individual right of individual privacy. A false accusation in your youth used to fade away, thank goodness, but now it remains forever. I hope that ranking emerges that distinguishes between truth and falsehood to allow people to start over, for example, on a new footing. We need to educate people about the consequences in this new world. If you upload a video of your young friend drunk without their permission, you may be ruining their life. We don't have the option of prohibiting internet use before the age of 16, and humans will never mature fast enough as children to keep up with the choices that we now offer them. We will need human intervention, starting with very strong parents. Now, criminals suffer too from the lack of a delete button, and they leave a virtual wake behind them. Anyone engaging in illegal activity needs some secrecy, some discretion to do their illegal or illicit business. So in a world ridden with technology, it's much harder to get away with things. Technology imposes risks on criminals and their activities at an increasing rate, which I guess is a good thing. And finally, in my worries, I worry about governments filtering information. Today, there are at least 42 governments engaging in online censorship in some form, up from just 4 a decade ago. Thank goodness Israel does not do this. But where does the line get drawn? Last year we saw in Egypt what happened when the government tried to turn the internet off. Now many governments are trying to build their own walled internet, a balkanized web in which you and I do not see the same information and no one knows what's been censored. Not only does filtering not work, it creates dark places where hate, radicalism, and crime can flourish. It's better to go find and stop the criminal using the police than merely try to block their webpage. Inevitably, filtering technology will become more and more effective. We face the real possibility that we could end up living in a society in which software silently deletes our voices, our thoughts, or even our culture. It would be terrible. So in the future, progress and innovation will accelerate in the rich and connected countries. We will all benefit from previously unreachable advances in medicine, in research, in transport, in products, the products that we use, and in the quality of life and entertainment that we enjoy. It's great. That shared experience puts us all together. But in countries that follow, it's even more interesting. Connectivity will compel citizens to demand that their governments catch up. Think of it as a forced upgrade. And if the leadership doesn't work, envy will. Unlike other resources, access to the internet is the one global good that no one starts a war over. Not yet, anyway. Companies will fight over the web in the marketplace, not in the battlefield. And that ultimately means lower prices, higher bandwidth, and more connectivity for all. People around the globe will expect connectivity and will battle to keep it. Greater access leads to stronger demands for accountability, and even stubborn governments will have to meet their citizens' rising expectations. On my recent trip to Afghanistan, I learned of a village that submitted without protest to the role of the Taliban, but then they revolted against the Taliban when they took their mobile phones away. As for the future of the web, if I had to sum it up in one sentence, it would be the following. It will be nothing, and it will be everything. It'll be nothing because it will disappear, not by going away, but by going everywhere, and that billions of people will travel with it. Thank you so very much, and congratulations on a great conference. Thank you.